In this video, I'm going to be talking about predictions I had regarding Spider-Man 2, and which ones I got right and which ones I got wrong, because I think it'll be fun to look back on. I'm actually going to start off with the ones that I got wrong, because believe it or not, I actually did not get that many wrong. The first of which being that I thought there would be a Miles versus Kraven boss fight. I thought that throughout the game, we would have a Peter versus Kraven boss fight, and that there would also be a Miles versus Kraven boss fight. Especially because these shots from the trailers led me to believe that at some point in the story, Peter would be MIA, whether it be because the symbiote is controlling him, or because Kraven actually managed to beat Peter, and that either of these reasons would be why Miles is confronting Kraven alone, and that Miles would actually be the one to beat Kraven because he doesn't know as much about Miles' abilities as opposed to Peter's, and also because in the initial reveal trailer, Kraven says this.
One who could push me, one who could surprise me, one who could even beat me. Will one of you finally give me what I desire?
A lot of people speculated that Peter would be the one to push him, but Miles would be the one who would surprise him and possibly even beat him. Due to Miles still being a relatively new crime fighter and also having his electric abilities. While none of that happened in the game, I'm very pleased with what we ended up getting instead, because that whole portion of the game where you go from fighting Mr. Negative in Kraven's arena as Miles to fighting Kraven as symbiote Peter, and then Peter and Miles fighting each other, just had my jaw on the floor the whole time, and is easily one of the most insane things I have ever experienced in a video game. My next prediction was that Venom won't be playable, and I'm sure that all of us are very happy that I was wrong about this. While I did consider the possibility that he would be playable, I didn't think that they would actually do it, since experiencing the story from the antagonist's POV might have been too much for the game to balance, as well as the fact that The Last of Us Part 2 received a lot of backlash for the fact that you spend half of the game playing as Abby. I didn't think that Spider-Man 2 was going to go this direction. However, what we ended up getting with the one playable Venom segment in the game was perfectly executed. Number 3. Kraven won't die. Yeah, I was very wrong about that. I didn't know what to expect from how Kraven's arc would conclude, but I certainly didn't expect it to end with Venom biting his head off.
Nom 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 nom.
Number 4. Shocker meme reference. Not gonna lie, they did Shocker dirty in this game. I was actually upset when I found out that Kraven killed him, and part of the reason why is because it meant that we're not gonna get a recreation of this glorious moment.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Number 5. Venom kills Rio Morales. This was something I was expecting to happen in the game, considering that this happened in the comics, and that this would further motivate Miles to want to fight Venom, and push Miles to grow more as a character. And also, I was definitely expecting someone to die at the hands of Venom, because it would have sucked if this entire story went by without Venom having any sort of long-term consequences on the characters. But like I said before, I definitely was not expecting Kraven to be killed by Venom. At first, I was a bit disappointed that they didn't go the direction of Venom killing Rio. However, doing this wouldn't have allowed them to introduce Cindy the way that they did, so I'm okay with it. Number 6. Hydro Man is in the game. I thought that Hydro Man was going to be in the game because of one of the Easter eggs in Coney Island, but this didn't end up happening, and we got Sandman instead, which I definitely think was better. This next one was just a huge wild card of mine, being that Jonathan Caesar would be in the game. I thought he might have been in the story, considering how in the comics this guy was recruiting villains to fight Spider-Man at the same time that he was also dealing with Venom. So I thought that maybe this could play a part into the story during the part where Peter has the symbiote to give him an extra thing to feel aggressive towards, and also give MJ some personal stakes by having someone to be a rival towards her in the story. But of course we didn't get this. Number 8, there will be a side mission that involves a joke villain that gets beaten easily. I was mostly hoping that something like this would be in the game because it would be hilarious, and it would also be like the Mysterio boss fight in the Spider-Man 2 movie game. I won't deny that it was a bit of a missed opportunity that they didn't do this, but all of the side content in the game was amazing, and upon my replays of the game, it's something that I didn't really think about, so I'm fine with them not doing this. And last but not least, the Chameleon won't be in the game and will be saved for Spider-Man 3. It's just as simple as that, really. I thought they'd be saving him for the third game, so his appearance and the twist that came with it were very shocking to me. Now let's move on to the stuff that I got right. The first of which being Mr. Negative getting a redemption arc. After they first revealed that Mr. Negative would be in the game in the story trailer, as I thought more about his inclusion in the game, I started to think that we might see something similar to what happened in Spider-Man 3, where Peter forgives Sandman. While it didn't happen exactly the way I thought it would, since Miles says he won't forgive him but he can't carry the hate anymore, we still got a resolution that involves Mr. Negative being a reformed villain. This moment really solidified my enjoyment of the game because it proved that there were plenty of cases in the game where even when I ended up being right about a prediction, they still managed to do it in a way that I didn't expect. The second thing that I got right was that we would see an adaptation of Kraven's Last Hunt. The game definitely paid homage to Kraven's Last Hunt, since the game is about Kraven's final hunt, and also the scene where Kraven kills Peter, but the black suit revives him, may have also been a nod to that storyline. I was kinda hoping that they would go all out by having a scene where Kraven buries him alive, so you're forced to play as Miles for a portion of the game, and then when Peter wakes up there's a QTE where you have to spam square to get out of the grave. But I still think that what we got was cool and a great way to introduce the symbiote in a way that's never been done before. The third thing is that Harry is Venom. This has been my prediction ever since I first saw the post-credit scene for the first game back in 2018, especially when you consider the fact that Harry being Venom has actually been done before in the Terrawolf Disney XD Ultimate Spider-Man show. And him being Venom just seemed like the most logical because it would have been similar to Otto, where this character that you've grown a strong attachment to throughout the course of the game ends up becoming your enemy. Now it's time for a 2-for-1 special. Number 4, the symbiote controls Peter in his sleep, and number 5, MJ stealth mission against Peter. I'm so glad that they went this route because it really showed how ferocious the symbiote is, and also provides great build-up towards Venom. 6 is a Spider-Verse reference. I figured there might be some kind of Spider-Verse reference in the game, especially considering how Insomniac's Peter Parker had a brief cameo in Across the Spider-Verse, but the YouTuber Caboose was one of the people who got to play the game early, and during his time with the demo, he predicted that the Spider-Bots are from other universes, and that once you collect them all, you'll get a mission that ties the game to the Spider-Verse movies, which seemed like a very solid prediction to me, and he ended up being right. Number 7, Miles vs. Peter boss fight. This was one of the very first things that people were predicting in regards to a sequel. We'd eventually reach a point where Symbiote Peter and Miles have to fight each other, and that the game would possibly even let us choose who we want to play as during the fight, and that cutscenes would be slightly different depending on the outcome of the battle. So for example, if you played as Peter and won the fight, or if you played as Miles and lost, Peter would realize that he just badly injured Miles and he's taking it too far and he needs to get rid of the suit. But if you played as Miles and managed to beat Peter, or if you played as Peter and then lost to Miles, then Peter would realize that Miles is right and he needs to get rid of the suit. While they didn't go with the whole choose who you want to play as concept, the way this fight turned out was absolute perfection in my opinion, and easily one of the top 5 greatest moments in video game history. Number 8 is Peter being a teacher. A lot of us were predicting that they were building up to this because of the fact that Peter has been a teacher before in the comics, and also in the Miles Morales game, Miles suggests to Peter that he should do it, and unfortunately it didn't last very long in Spider-Man 2, but I'm still glad that we got to see it. 9. Rhino won't be in the game. Because of the fact that we already fought Rhino once in Spider-Man PS4, and then we fought him twice in Miles Morales, a lot of us were getting sick of Rhino, and really hoping that he wouldn't show up again in Spider-Man 2. I didn't think he would be in the game, since I'm sure the developers would be aware of how repetitive it would be to fight him for the 4th time, and thankfully we dodged that bullet. 10. Screwball won't be in the game. Considering how annoying Screwball was in the first game, it wouldn't have been surprising if they put Screwball in every single one of these games to be the Insomniac equivalent of Arkham's Riddler, and everyone was really hoping that this would not be the case. And thankfully, Screwball was never seen, heard, or mentioned since Spider-Man 1. Thank goodness. 11. Norman visits Otto in prison. Some people figured that we might have a scene of Peter or Norman visiting Otto at the raft to ask about the symbiote or Harry's disease. And we did indeed get this with Norman, although I definitely was not expecting it to be one of the post-credit scenes, and thought that something like this would happen somewhere in the halfway point of the game's story. 12. Haley and Miles get together. It definitely seemed like the Miles Morales game set the groundwork for this to be explored in Spider-Man 2, and sure enough, it ended up happening. 13. Peter doesn't die. At least not permanently. I didn't think Peter was going to die in this game, because if anything, I would expect them to save his death for Spider-Man 3, and while he did technically die against Kraven, it wasn't permanent. This actually leads me to believe that Peter actually won't die in Spider-Man 3, and instead we might actually get a Spider-Man story with a happy conclusion for once, where Peter and MJ get married, but I suppose we'll get there when we get there. 14. Anti-Venom. I was originally going to include this in the incorrect category, because while I did consider that Anti-Venom could play a part in the story, it was absolutely nothing like how I thought it would be. But if I considered the possibility, then it should still count as being correct. 15. The game takes inspiration from Spider-Man 3 and Web of Shadows. From the very beginning, when the first teaser trailer for the game was released, I considered the fact that we might see a symbiote invasion happen in the game as Insomniac's way of paying homage to Web of Shadows, and I can't believe I actually hit the nail on the head on that so early on. But also when the gameplay reveal happened, people were pointing out how Kraven hunting the lizard was a funny similarity to the Spider-Man 3 game, and I definitely think at least some inspiration from that game was taken for this one, especially because of how the lizard's design looks like the Mega Lizard from the Spider-Man 3 game, and you even fight him in the sewers with the black suit, and the lizard's roar affects the symbiote. When I look at all of that, there's no way that you can tell me that they did not at least take some inspiration from the Spider-Man 3 game. 16. Carnage cliffhanger. Evan Filarka made a video where he discusses the possibility that Spider-Man 2 could actually end on a cliffhanger, so I considered the fact that if this was the case, perhaps the cliffhanger would be the creation of Carnage. And while we didn't exactly get that, we did get somewhat of a cliffhanger regarding Carnage in the Flame side missions, so I was at least a little bit correct. 17. The Ultimate Spider-Man game is referenced. They were definitely paying homage to Ultimate Spider-Man with the playable Venom sequence, as well as the fact that the final boss takes place on the football field. I was really hoping that they would pay homage to the Ultimate Spider-Man game in some way, shape, or form in Spider-Man 2, since it's my favorite of the pre-Insomniac era Spider-Man games, so that was really cool to see. 18. This version of Venom is one of, if not the most OP version of the character. I figured Venom was gonna be super OP in this game, considering the fact that Black Suit Spider-Man was already OP to begin with. So when you take all of that and give it to Venom, he's gonna be even more OP than that. This version of Venom even has wings and managed to incapacitate Peter while he had the anti-Venom suit. So if this version of Venom is not the most OP, it's definitely one of the most OP versions of him. 19. No Gwen Stacy. I figured Gwen wouldn't be in the game because, quite frankly, I just think there's no room for her in the Insomniac universe. They don't need her to be a rival love interest for Peter and have a love triangle story arc, because Peter and MJ already went through a point where they broke up and got back together in the first game, so doing something like that would feel repetitive. And we also don't need Gwen to be younger and be a love interest for Miles, because we already have Haley for that. And I'm going to be brutally honest here, I really did not want to see Spider-Gwen become a thing in these games. It's fine in the movies, but just leave it relegated to that, please. I was quite happy that they're going with Silk instead of Spider-Gwen. 20. Green Goblin tease. I'm sure we all figured that this game would have some type of tease that Norman is going to become Green Goblin in the third game. 21. Howard and his pigeons return. So since both of the previous games had pigeon missions, I figured that they would do it again in this game, and that pigeon missions would be a recurring thing throughout the franchise. However, I don't think any of us expected Howard to die. Rest in peace. You were a good man. And last but not least, 22 is that Yuri becomes Wraith, and we have a boss fight against her. It definitely seemed like this was going to happen at some point in the franchise, whether it be in the second or third game. However, I definitely didn't expect Yuri to be on our side again. I loved that. And that's it. It was fun to look back on my predictions and talk about it all. Thanks for listening. See you next time.